Acts 15:5. But there rose up certain of the sects of the Pharisees which believed, saying that it was needful to circumcise them and to command them to keep the law of Moses. I officially have a new favorite work salvation proof text. Because, okay, here's the thing, right? This whole section is about this dispute over whether or not Christians should still get circumcised. What's interesting is that we have two groups in this conversation. The first are mentioned in verse 1, and they say that unless you are circumcised, you cannot be saved. What's interesting about these people is that we are not told that they are saved. In fact, we're told that they taught the brethren, but they themselves are not identified as brethren. They're not identified as fellow believers. They're not identified as Christians. And obviously those people are completely wrong, but nonetheless, there is a mention given to these other people who say that you should still be circumcised, but they do not say that you need to be circumcised in order to be saved. And those people are identified specifically as believers. When you're reading the Bible, you need to pay attention to when it says things and when it doesn't say things. If it's telling us in verse 5 that these people are believers, but it's not telling us in verse 1 that those people are believers, we should look for the difference. I mean, they're both saying that circumcision is important. They're both saying that people should be circumcised. The ones who are not called believers believe that you need to be circumcised in order to be saved. Whereas we're not told that about the people in verse 5. So if you imagine this in the modern day, you might have a Catholic who would say that if you commit a mortal sin like adultery, you are, at least temporarily until you go to confession, no longer saved. So they'd say you need to avoid committing adultery if you want to be saved. And then you'd have some other people, some Baptists, some Christians, who would say, well, yeah, you need to avoid committing adultery. If you plug those two people in, you would then say, well, who are the believers? The people who do not say that you need to do this to be saved. The people who say that you do need to do this to be saved, the Catholics, they would not be amongst those who are numbered as believers. So yeah, the big takeaway for me is if you're going to say that works are necessary for salvation, you are not a believer. I should also point out, though, that this does, of course, give us an indication that people who are believers still care about works. They will still preach hard against sin. And if you're going to a faith-alone Baptist church, you should hope to hear some really hard preaching against it. Although in this case, of course, as it happens, the people in verse 5 are wrong. Circumcision isn't necessary, but that's not really what I want to focus on here. I just want to focus on the fact that there is this distinction between those who believe a work is necessary for salvation and those who believe that it is not. And how are they distinguished? The latter group believes because they do not think that works are necessary for salvation, and that is what makes someone a true believer in the gospel of Christ.